So I've never been a big fan of strip clubs, like ever. Like even when I was like really, I honestly I never got the point. Because to me, going to a strip club is like walking into a buffet, but you can't eat any of the food. I was like, why am I bothering doing this? This is a waste of time and money. Uh and soldiers, they're soldiers. You guys know what the deal is, and they'll waste entire like if some E4 will like blow his paycheck at a strip club. You're like, what is wrong with you? Like, what is happening here? And so, seeing having someone like that, in that environment is pretty rare. You wouldn't run across it that often. But that's the weird thing about the military is that there's this dichotomy of, incredibly strict discipline that they instill, at work, but the people they have doing it turn that discipline off like for the second work ends. They turn it off like once they go into the real world. Although that's not probably a fair observation because that's generally the young soldiers. Like people would joke about infantry guys and how infantry guys are dumb. Infantry guys they're the ones that they'll run headfirst into a brick wall and everything. Now, I get why they have that reputation, but I never met a dumb infantry like senior NCO or a dumb infantry captain. I never, like you will never run across that. Like the guys that actually stay around for a while, they're the smart ones. So I wanted to go into that with a military discipline and everything. Where did you pick up any habits, or maybe not pick up habits specifically, but things that you really liked about the way the military ran itself, as far as the structure and its order, that you're like, oh, that's a good idea. Wish that would be implemented more places, or something you've done in your own life.
Well, I don't know if there was anything that I will say with regard to sort of like
Thanks, Lee.
hey Lee, what's going on? Yeah,
Appreciate it.
TJ is fantastic. He's a
Oh, stop,
phenomenal
folks.
blogger.
Stop it.
One thing that I like about the military is they take people from all walks of life and they throw you into a mixing bowl and you got to get along.
Yep.
And I think that that's just really good. And whether that is it could be racial, it could be just personality. I don't like that that personality kind of grinds my gears. I don't like it. Or maybe you're the timid one. Maybe like in my case, I had this officer from Vermont, I think, and he was just he'd talk fast, and he was always trying to cut you down, and he was just mean. I didn't like it.
Yeah.
And one day, and he was my commanding officer. He was a captain, an old E7. He was like a green to gold.
Oh God,
I mean,
Jesus.
He had a lot of grit behind him, and from Ranger Battalion. So like he was a tough guy.
You poor bastard. You poor bastard.
Yeah. For lack of a better word. That's exactly what it was. So one day, and I think looking back, I think what he was doing was trying to say, hey, little Southern boy, you're being too polite. Sometimes you need to, be a little more direct to give I don't know what he was doing, but he said something one time. And I said, well, sir, here's what happened. Here's the deal on this thing. I was standing in the doorway of his office, and he was like, yeah, well, that doesn't sound right. I don't know if I believe that. And I was like, sir, I don't care if you believe it or not. That's what happened. Bam. I was right there. I saw the whole thing. You can talk so-and-so. And I lost my cool a little bit.
Yeah.
And started talking fast and sort of told him what was up. And he looked at me and went, nice. And then went back to writing. And he was nice to me ever after. We still keep in touch. He follows me on YouTube. Like, he probably going to see this. Like, Shane, if you're watching this, anyway, and that was a great moment for me in my professional development. Like, sometimes there is a time to say, all right, I know you're a Southern man that likes to sugarcoat stuff, but you need to be a little more direct. That was very good for me to say, just, you don't have to be mean. You don't have to be nasty, but be direct. And just like you're saying earlier, sometimes like a big $10 word can be just as much of a comprehension speed bump as just beating around the bush about it.
Yeah.
Just get to it. Say what you mean. That was very helpful for me professionally, personally. I liked that. I liked that it made you you know, when you're showing up, it kind of makes you have to, like, you have to care because you're gonna get eaten alive if you show up and you don't care and you're not prepared. You will be eaten
Yes.
alive. So just whether you like it or not, you're gonna have to put in some work to make this happen. And I think that kind of I think it was good for my work ethic. Um, it's not that I enjoyed the hardships, but looking back, the Army put me into a lot of situations that just sucked, as you well know. You know, and it could be something as simple as bad food or uncomfortable temperatures.
Often
And
both.
yet, or a lot of times both. And then we're just gonna just be here for a year or so, and you're just gonna suck it up. And that has made the rest of my life easier because I'm
Yeah.
always, you know, people around me will be maybe whining or complaining about the weather or whatever, and I'll just kind of be like, you know, this really isn't that bad. So,
Oh,
you know, it's one of those like, oh, you know, you want to whine? I'll give you something to whine about.
yeah.
Um, and
Oh, good.
So anyway, I think a lot of I got so much out of the Army, but I think for me it was more personal and professional more so than that. I do like that they put everything in manuals, and if you want to learn something, it's been written down before.
Yeah.
I
You're not
think
going to
that
stump them.
no, somebody's already thought about it and wrote about it at length.
The most important thing that you mentioned, I think, for anyone listening or whatever, is that it is not for everybody. That is something that I stress the most about the military, that it is not for everyone. And uh because like the methods that they use and the stuff that they teach, it does work if you're the right person. Because like I can see it not work. It doesn't work on most people. Like most people serve, the average time people serve in the army is like 3 years and they're out. And so that's just it's kind of it works with a specific set of people. But I wrote down a couple of things. The first thing, when you talked about your commander, and I don't know if I ever told you this story, but I was sitting at a table once. I was in the army, and I was there with an E7 and an O2 and a lieutenant. It was a sergeant first class and a lieutenant. So I'm sitting there at the table, and this private walks up to the sergeant that I'm sitting next to. And he goes to parade rest, and he goes, Sergeant so and so, just addressing him. And then the seven's on his phone, and he just sits there on his phone, like doesn't say a word. And so, like the private's there again. He goes, "Excuse me, Sergeant so and so, Sergeant." Like he's 2 feet away from this guy, and he's just on his phone, just doing whatever. And so me and like the lieutenant, we're looking at each other, and lieutenant goes, "Oh hey, Sergeant so and so, Private, Smith, just called you." He goes, "Yeah, I heard him." And I was like, and he just stayed on his phone. Now, I remember watching that and saying, I hope I'm never that kind of person. I hope I am never the kind of person that just feels like, since I have this rank and this power and this authority, that I get to treat people like shit because they are, their pay grade is lower than mine. And I remember thinking, so the only caveat on this is I knew this private. And this guy did ask a ton of stupid questions. Like 9 out of 10 times, like, it's something we already went over or something that he should know by now. I got it. Even still, if that happens, and and by the way, I'm more than willing to, like, I'm being as charitable as possible. I'm more than willing to admit that whatever he was typing, that text message, that email, could have been very important too, and almost certainly more important than what this private was going to ask. All you got to do is say, all right, I'll be with you in a second. Like, that's it.
Yep,
That's
yep.
all you have to do. And I tell you, the ones who were the worst with this were the crusty old ESEP. They were the worst with it. Like, I could, in a million years, I could never imagine a lieutenant colonel doing that. Like, I could never imagine that. Like, it's just like there's something about like the grumpy old old E6s and E7s. They were just, I guess first sergeants, they're supposed to be that way. Who knows? But it's just that it's just awful. And I can't stand that. That's one thing that I didn't like, is when I often talk about how people say the military is full of the best and brightest. It's not, folks. It's not. Let's stop it. Stop saying that. Like, it's like the military is full of regular ass people. That's who's in the military. And they signed up to do a job. And I don't know if you noticed this. When I joined the military, the first thing I noticed was that, oh, this institution is mostly full of assholes who want to be in charge. That's what's going on here. Like a lot of them really can't wait. They get some authority and they just run it into the ground. And what you mentioned about how it prepares you for hardships, that is so true. The example I think of is one night I was out in the field and I had to go leave, where we were sleeping just on the ground, and I had to go leave for a meeting or something like that. And so I asked, I asked someone was like, "Hey, it looks like it's gonna rain, so I have to leave for this meeting. If it starts to rain, can you like roll up my sleeping bag and put it into my rucksack, or whatever, so it doesn't get drenched?"
Where this is going.
I come back, from the meeting a couple hours because it's like far away. I came back from the meeting. Of course, it was raining. Sure as shit, my sleeping bag was just drenched. And by now, not only was it wet, but it was also like the ground had like a quarter inch of water all over it. So I couldn't even move it to somewhere dry because like putting it on the mat didn't matter because it just soaked through. I was like, so crawled in my sleeping bag. I laid down. And every time I was wet. Every time I moved, like my clothes or the sleeping bag would just like slide because it was wet. It was just terrible. And I couldn't sleep. And I had this moment where I was like, all right, TJ, this is what we're doing now. This is what we're doing. Like you're sleeping in the water. It's not going to change. Sitting here being upset about it's not going to matter. And then I fell asleep. I think about that moment all the time. I think about it all the time. Whenever I'm doing just shit work or whenever I'm just like trudging through something that's awful, it's like, this is what we're doing now. Like, just stop complaining about it. Just get to work. And the last thing I wanted to add is when you talk about I'm sure you've had these instances too, but I remember January 6th, like right after January 6th, 2021, and the National Guard had been sent up for Biden's inauguration because, obvious reasons. And so Trump was still in charge at the time. And I kept seeing all these articles back in the Facebook days, all these articles like my friends were posting and stuff. And it was talking about the National Guard. And it's like the National Guard, they are sleeping in parking lots. They are sleeping on. You remember that? Do you remember that?
Our troops deserve better. Like they're in a parking lot. That's pretty nice. I definitely saw a lot of those and had a chuckle.
Remember that?
Yeah.
I was like, folks, listen. If you talk to those guardsmen, like this doesn't crack the top 10 worst places they've slept. Trust me, like it is fine. That was pretty funny. I don't know, but it does help you put stuff into perspective. You're like, okay, look, it could be a lot worse. Shit could be a lot worse than it is right now. I liked the structure in like a 5-paragraph op order is great. Like for planning in the future and stuff like that. Like, did you use any of that like in your regular life?
Well, as far as the be bright, be brief, and be gone when you're given a briefing, I use that as often as I can, even in a phone call. Like if I'm calling somebody, I'm not going to sit there and talk your ear off. Yeah. Say, hey, this is, Jake, here's why I'm calling, and here's what I'm calling about, whatever, and goodbye. And so I definitely use that. Obviously that goes into more detail than I generally will, but as far as like, what's the situation? What are we even talking about? Okay, let's have that. You can loosely do that in an email. Here's what I'm the mission. Here's what I'm asking you about. Here's what I need guidance on, or ask, whatever. And then, if we're, do you want to come camping with us? Like, make sure you bring your tent or whatever, which I didn't camp for years after getting out of the military. I'm just now getting to where I'm like, no, that kind of sounds fun. I got kids and, I might do it, but yeah, I got all funned out on camping. I will tell you.
Yeah. I don't go camping. Camping would be cool if I'm not spending the night outside. I'm not doing that anymore. That's where I draw the line. Like being outdoors and stuff is fun, but I'm not sleeping out there. That's not going to happen. What was I gonna ask about that? Oh, bottom line up front. I use that all the time because I don't know about you, but I have my innate tendency is to kind of warm my way up into it like it's a performance. Like, no, this is work. They're like, here, this is what I need. Now I'll give you the ancillary stuff. And it sounds simple. It's like, hey, just say right off the bat, first line of the email, what this is about, and go for it. I thought that was pretty good. I just had a story about 5-paragraph op orders. I started just now, but it's always bugged me that military ceremonies have start with an invocation and a benediction. For those who don't know, they're prayers. Like the ceremonies start with prayers. That's always annoyed me because like and that we have chaplains like James Madison, who wrote the First Amendment. He did not like the idea of military having chaplains because he thought it violated separate church state. It does, but he was shouted down, which I find funny. The guy who wrote the First Amendment said, "No, buddy, you're wrong," and so he lost out on that. So I wrote this. I wrote out this op order for this ceremony we were doing in my battalion, and of course, invocation, benediction has to be in there, or whatever. And so I was like, I'm not putting it in there. And I said, I'm not putting it in there. And when I turned it in, to the sergeant major and the battalion commander, I hope they asked me why I didn't put it there. It's like, I hope they asked me why it's not there. And so I wrote it out and I turned it in and I kept waiting. And then I got an email. It's like, looks good. I was like, what? I was for sure this would happen. And then like I got sent to a school, I think, like right after that, and someone else took over the program. And and then I asked people who went there. It's like, oh yeah, we had it. I was like, they probably said, oh, Whitehead just forgot, and they put it. That's probably what they did, but that annoyed me. But I don't know. That's pretty funny. The soldier care thing. How do you feel about that? Like maybe that's not something you use in like your regular life, but that's one thing I did appreciate about the Army, that it's called soldier. We call it soldier parenting because sometimes it does go a little overboard or whatever. But man, even down to, I saw this great video someone made about, she was in the Navy and she was talking about how like you would have classes. They would make you go to, like, say it's, June or something. And they'll bring you together and they say, hey, listen, summer's coming upon us. You guys are going to be outdoors. You're going to be boating. Here's some little bits of advice to make sure, you know how to put on a life jacket, survive. I mean, like actual good stuff and she's like, I wish like regular jobs would do that. They won't, but it does help out the workforce. And it's kind of a good experience, I think.
Yeah, that's very true. I think a lot of the stuff, like you said, it goes, like it becomes borderline babysitting, or it can be used as such. But I think, like the Friday, when you're in garrison, the Friday evening sort of safety brief, that's a good thing.
It really is. Annoying as it is, it's a good thing.
Because like a lot of the stuff people are saying, oh, he's so, the Army people are so dumb, or even like lower enlisted guys are so dumb. Like, no, they're so young. A lot of the time they're smart as anybody else. They just make foolish decisions because they're young. They don't have a lot of experience and they're away from mom and dad most of the time. And so, they're going to, even a well-behaved kid is going to try some stuff that he might not have if he were back home. And so you just have, sometimes it's a good kid, and a good kid just needs to be reminded, like, hey, don't be doing anything stupid. I mean, my dad used to say that to me every time I left the house. If I was going, to be around friends, he'd be like, hey, you act like a Phillips. Okay. Don't be embarrassing me. Don't embarrass yourself. And I was like, yeah, okay. And that sort of, that kept me out of some trouble. It really did, as simple as that was. And, and I do like that. And then of course you can have some fun with them too. Usually, I was around a bunch of cav guys and infantry guys. So that's sort of the sphere of my, I was never in a co-ed unit or anything. So I don't have that. I never had the, experience of that dynamic, but it was always like, who could give the most, I don't know, profane and creative safety brief. It's always fun stuff.
That is pretty funny. That is pretty funny. They I don't know, you're right. It's just that they're so young, and people like to talk like they didn't do stupid things when they were kids. They did, and it's like, yes, you did. You absolutely did. And stop judging this 19-year-old for behaving like a 19-year-old. And I will say that our generation, like millennials, we're definitely better about this than like boomers or Gen Xers were to us. Where millennial for the longest time didn't mean someone born between like 1981 and 1997. It meant dumb idiots kid. That's what it meant. And I remember hearing people like a few years ago, so I'm like, yeah, this kid, he's a millennial. I was like, well, so am I. Like, what are you talking about? Because people didn't really realize what millennial even meant for a long time.
Right.
And I don't know, I like shitting on people just because they're young. It just like people's memories are just so short in trying to think about what you were like as a kid. And the dumbest, look, this is like, I don't try to get political and everything here, but it does bother me when people like dunk on people whose lives aren't in as in order as they believe they should be. And it's like, have you ever, you ever drive drunk? You ever, have unprotected sex with someone you didn't know that well? Mistakes anybody could make could ruin your life. Like mistakes most people have made, and a few people, those mistakes actually ruin their lives. Like you're not better than them. Like you're not. You're a human being, just like they are. And like I don't know. I that's one of my pet peeves. I can't stand when people like try to flex on folks because they're lucky and they aren't.
Yeah. And that is very common. It definitely, that's sad. I definitely think it ought to be like, even if you think, well, that's not how you should live your life, offer a solution for them or something. Be nice.
Yeah.
Be nice about it.